Yes! Yes, Buck Rogers, let's go, baby! Yeah! Got somebody not out to screw you. But the globalists got us to the point that they were going to shut down free speech, shut everything down, and really bring in nasty stuff. And even large sections of the elite went, you know, this globalism doesn't work so good, and this is really nasty, and we don't want to do this. So there's a real war going on in the elite right now. Don't think Trump just did this on his own. He was recruited by patriots and U.S. intelligence agencies, for a fact. Trump was recruited by the U.S. Army. That's a big secret, but you deserve to know what the Democrats already know. You deserve to understand what's really going on. We were being held underwater. The country was being drowned. That's over. And the communist Chinese are crapping their britches right now. It isn't hurting their people that we're having a good economy. That'll help them.
I've been listening and watching Alex Jones for almost 20 years. He's never been perfect, but I've always been glad he was there, even if he is a limited hangout for the patriot libertarian crowd. I've always enjoyed his exposure of legislation stopping people accessing alternative healthcare, forced vaccinations and police raids on peaceful raw milk producers and organic food markets. But now with Trump, Alex has let his full-blown support for Israel and the Jewish Zionist crime network all hang out. Don't you think if patriots within the US intelligence community really wanted a coup, they would have picked someone like Rand Paul to promote? The notion that Trump is the pick for a military coup in America is utterly ridiculous, unless you understand that the real intelligence community behind Trump is Benyamin Netanyahu and Israeli military intelligence and their private helper network operating throughout the US government. Here is what Alex Jones said 2 days later in the first hour of his show, January 24, 2017, Wednesday.
And it's happening. They're making their move like they're not giving up. So, as far as I'm concerned, the safest thing to do would just to be have Trump just go ahead and have the army go ahead and arrest these people. That's all. We're in a red alert right now. We need to have the army just arrest these people. A lot of people that have been listening to the show for 20 years, they go, Alex, in the last segment, you just called for the president, if need be, to use the armed services to arrest the leaders of a criminal cabal openly plotting the president's assassination, the overthrow of our electoral process, the takeover of our elections, and a one-party system to be formed where all political dissent against the leftist, globalist Soros program is outlawed. And yes, that is the only sure, strong response. And then once that group has been removed within the Constitution and Bill of Rights, we revert right back to the rule of law. But there is COG provisions, and I guarantee you, George Washington, if stuff like this was going on, would go arrest the people that were doing it.
Now, after you've watched this video, you might be wondering exactly who is going to be arrested. I have a fair idea. It will be real American patriots exposing Israel and the neocon network in the United States. Note also, Alex mentions foreign agents operating in the US. Will the roundups include AIPAC, the America-Israel Political Action Committee, otherwise known as the Lobby? Of course it won't. Now, did you notice Alex go full bore on the hand signals? I'm not well up on my Tex Mars and Codexa Magica, but you can see Alex clearly make hand signals and then check the camera to make sure he's doing them correctly. If you've been watching, Alex has moved on somewhat from insulting and vilifying Islam all day to insulting China by calling the Chinese people inbred and genetically inferior. Don't take my word for it, go watch him. Jones is pure incitement. That's the job of Jones and InfoWars, to polarize and form the dialectic. There can be no middle ground in Soviet-era psychological warfare operations. Because if there is a middle ground, people with differing views can conduct a dialogue, form consensus, make peace, and maybe even form an alliance. And that is something Benjamin Netanyahu and the Jewish Zionist criminal enterprise cannot allow. After all, Bibi is dedicated into making his problem, Muslims who fight back, into our problem. So we'll run off and kill his opponents in the quest for greater Israel. Alex Jones has very kindly given us some good information. Not that most of us didn't already know, but it's good of Alex to confirm the obvious. Donald Trump is a military intelligence psychological warfare operation, as is Alex Jones, and we'll delve more deeply into Jones and his background later. Now I need to correct something. It's not really military intelligence who recruited Donald Trump to assist in the protection racket that is political Zionism and Jewish power. It is the private intelligence network operated primarily by the neocon clique and its poster boy, Benyamin Netanyahu, chief rent boy in the crime bunker known as Israel. Netanyahu is the visible tip of a giant iceberg running from Israeli military intelligence and the Talpiot high technology program, all the way to Sheldon Adelson and the Trump casino drug money laundering network and even ISIS. It's all about drugs, money laundering, weapons sales, and the fulfillment of the Oded Yanon plan in Greater Israel. Donald Trump and his presidency is an integral part of that program. Grassroots awareness has grown about Israel and its role in 9/11. US citizens are dying and becoming state-sanctioned killers in wars for Israel. Israel spies and steals from the United States taxpayers. Bibi and co. had to do something to stem the flood. These private intelligence and military networks and rat lines were set up by the banking house of Rothschild. They operated within British MI6, American CIA, NSA, and every alphabet agency you can think of. These same networks infect army intelligence, the real power behind the facade of the civilian agencies. If you want an excellent Hollywood portrayal of these networks, you can't go past Captain America, the Winter Soldier, where S.H.I.E.L.D., the CIA, is infected with the Hydra, Jewish Zionist private intelligence network. Watch the presentation by the legendary Richard Thiem, the Obi-Wan of the DEF CON IT world. His presentation, The Only Way to Tell Truth is in Fiction, is a must-watch. Richard will explain to you how they run a psychological warfare operation 5 layers deep, utilising books, movies, newspapers and television. And Alex Jones. Even the main players won't know their true roles. Donald Trump is a product of one such operation, and it's coming directly out of Israel.
Hey, look at this! Toronto Trump! It's Trump the Thumper! My God! The hostile takeover!
It is time for the Battle of the Billionaires!
The live pay-per-view event took place in front of 85,000 screaming wrestling fans, including Trump's beauty queens, Miss Teen USA, Miss USA, and Miss Universe. Wrestler Bobby Lashley was Trump's partner.
It's quite possible, too, that Alex Jones really believes in what he's doing. It is military intelligence arms that supply the kill squads, bodyguards, high-tech equipment and infrastructure to run drugs, launder drug money, and sell weapons all over the world. Those hidden tentacles came most dramatically to the surface during the 1980s and 90s in the infamous Guns for Drug operation we know as Iran-Contra. Colombian drug cartels, along with US Army personnel who were quote-unquote retired, ran hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States in exchange for weapons to conduct a covert war against the Sandinista communist government. You can read more about that operation and the legendary Barry Seal in the excellent book by Daniel Hopsicker, Barry and the Boys. You should read Daniel's site, especially his excellent work on Donald and the Russian oligarchs, which is outstanding. Daniel has unfortunately been having heart trouble. I hope he's okay. American Made is the Hollywood version of Daniel's book, Barry and the Boys, now a major motion picture starring Tom Cruise as Barry Seal. I can assure you the movie barely scratches the surface, but you get the basic idea. Seal died with the private telephone number of then CIA Director George Bush Sr. in his pocket. As a side note, and before we get on to the details of Trump, who backs him and why, would you believe I met Barry Seal's boss, Mr. Roger Reeves, in a West Australian prison? You've most likely never heard of Mr. Reeves, and it's the quiet ones you watch out for. Roger is the man who single-handedly professionalised the Medellin cartel's transport operation. He shipped 600 kilos a week with Barry and moved on to 20-ton loads of cocaine with the Cali cartel. Roger also worked extensively with Mr. Nice, Howard Marks, transporting 20-ton loads of hashish. Roger was a close friend of Jorge Ochoa, the real brains behind the Medellin cartel. It was Roger who introduced Barry to the cartel after a chance meeting on a plane out of Honduras. Understanding Barry Seal and his background will give you some understanding as to who they recruit for these private intelligence operations. Roger personally told me Barry had completed 7 combat jumps into various places around the world, had over 1,000 parachute jumps to his credit, and had a major scar around his neck from where he was operated on after he broke his neck in a jump. Barry was throwing CIA payloads out of DC-3 doors over Cuba at the ripe old age of 16 and hanging out with Lee Harvey Oswald and David Ferrier in their civilian air patrol outfit as a teenager. Barry was also Army Reserve all the way. All the better to disappear for a while when you're up to mischief. This is a far cry from the jolly fat man we see on our screens. Barry Seal was a member of an elite private intelligence network. You can hear about Roger's time with Barry and his own incredible life story on this video. His book Smuggler is also available. Check it out for some interesting dot connecting. Check out this video of CIA Director John Deutsch being grilled by a journalist. This is also the famous point where early deep state researcher Mike Ruppert confronted Deutsch over LA cops assisting with the CIA to bring drugs into LA. Let's start with Ruppert and move on to the journalist.
Unwittingly joined the U.S. government mafia, of which part the CIA is the kingpin, the Don.
So you're saying that the CIA is the kingpin of the head of the United States Mafia?
I am a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, and I work South Central Los Angeles, and I will tell you, Director Deutsch, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
That you have a private network run by George Bush and Ollie North, not the CIA. You won't find the records in the CIA. They're not there. They're in these privatized intelligence agencies. Will you pursue that? Will you pursue Ollie North and George Bush and the mass?
He was bang on. Private intelligence networks. Not the CIA, not the FBI, not the DIA. Private intelligence networks, always intimately linked with Army intelligence. The documents are not in the CIA because it's not really the CIA running these operations. It's Army intelligence and it's private, off-the-books contract operators. The same ones that run ISIS, run drugs out of Afghanistan, run kill squads that get rid of pesky bankers and billionaires who know too much. Not to mention the odd journalist. One of those private mercenary groups is the infamous Blackwater group run by Eric Prince, personal friend of Alex Jones. Prince is now doing serious business in China, which is interesting given Jones' China rants lately. Central to the drugs, guns and money laundering are, you guessed it, casinos. And yes, we're getting closer to Trump and who and what he represents. A casino exists for a bare few reasons. One of those reasons is to launder drug money, but also any monies taken from various deep state operations, from drugs to weapons to sex slaves to organ trafficking. And there is one country that specialises in all of these. Despite the passage of 2 years and the horde of hardcore Israeli first and neocons who surround and support Trump, despite his well-known personal friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu, his son-in-law's close friendship with the lunatic and incredibly powerful Russian Jewish organised crime sect of Chabad Lubavitch, despite Trump and his father's lifelong association with New York mob boss Roy Cohn and the New York, New Jersey Jewish mob, we still find a vast army of Trump supporters in complete denial of who and what Trump is, and the vast Jewish Zionist organised crime network he fronts for. In the excellent production of Trump is the Swamp, Truth Media Revolution production lays it out for you. This video hit over 150,000 views and then disappeared. It has been re-uploaded. Here is a section detailing just who is behind Trump. Enjoy.
It's happening. They're making their move like they're not giving up. So, as far as I'm concerned, the safest thing to do would just to be have Trump just go ahead and have the army go ahead and arrest these people. That's all. We're in a red alert right now. We need to have the army just arrest these people. A lot of people that have been listening to the show for 20 years, they go, Alex, in the last segment, you just called for the president, if need be, to use the armed services to arrest the leaders of a criminal cabal openly plotting the president's assassination, the overthrow of our electoral process, the takeover of our elections, and a one-party system to be formed where all political dissent against the leftist, globalist Soros program is outlawed. And yes, that is the only sure, strong response. And then once that group has been removed within the Constitution and Bill of Rights, we revert right back to the rule of law. But there is COG provisions, and I guarantee you, George Washington, if stuff like this was going on, would go arrest the people that were doing it.
This same New York, New Jersey Jewish mob is the one described by American housewife Kay Griggs. Her 1997 7-hour interview remains the pinnacle of understanding how the world works. If you haven't watched all 7 hours, you'd better start now. Let's hear what Kay has to say about the US and Israeli military and how the drugs, weapons and money flow around Donald Trump's old stomping ground of New York, New Jersey and Atlantic City. How rogue assassins are trained to kill innocent people to then blame on the Arabs or someone else. How Israeli special forces train with US Navy SEALs to kill people in the United States, including former head of the CIA, William Colby. How the United States Marine Corps are the assassins for the mob and work with motorcycle gangs, deal drugs, ship weapons and organise music festivals as part of the drug culture psychological warfare operation. Kay describes how Lady Di was murdered, how the British were forced out of the Middle East and New York Zionist Jews took over with catastrophic results. Catastrophic for the Middle East and catastrophic for New Yorkers on 9/11. Let's hear Kay talk. Then let's hear Alex Jones again. Listen.
Your name is Catherine Pollard Griggs.
Yes.
You are the wife of Colonel George Griggs.
Yes.
11 years of marriage.
Yes.
It's true that your husband is and has been the head of special operations under Admiral Kelso, NATO.
Yes.
And it's true that you were the head of the hospitality committee.
Yes.
You were the member of the executive board of NATO's Wives Club.
Absolutely.
And also that your husband's background includes NATO Defense College in Rome,
Yes.
Princeton class of 1959.
Yes.
His intelligence career, his spy career began in Vietnam.
Yes.
And it's also true that it continues under this day.
Absolutely, under General Wilhelm.
And in fact, your husband was an alcoholic.
Absolutely.
And probably
Incredible.
is to this day.
Absolutely.
And during these drunken stupors, he would, so to speak, blab on and tell you everything he knew about the intelligence community.
Everything.
Nothing was hid.
No.
It was like he wanted to relieve himself and unburden his heart.
Yes.
And so he told you everything that you now know about the
Yes.
intelligence community.
Yes.
By your association with him, you have come to understand and know, this, as shocking as this may sound to the people who are viewing this, that the United States military is literally run by sexual deviants heavy on the homosexual side.
Truly.
And they actually become mind slaves, and that the U.S.
Yes.
military,
Yes.
literally, as outrageous as this sounds, is a mind control operation.
Yes, totally now. Totally now. They've gotten rid of the good folks, like MacArthur. Got rid of them, one by one. The one thing I've been able to determine about the current Marine Corps, the Marine Corps that my husband came in with, Gray, Reap, Sheehan, they're all mob.
Now, when you say mob, you're talking mafia type mob?
New Jersey mafia, right. Right.
And there's
Brooklyn, New Jersey. This whole intelligence operation, the OSS, he was recruiting known communists who were involved in the Spanish subverting Spain. You know what? There's no more. They're not Americans. They're not Christians. They're German existentialists. Now, what are they doing running our nation? It's kind of, they have more affinity for the state of Israel right now than they do our nation. The admiral would go to these parties at this big mansion outside of Marseille. What they did was they invited the wild girls, the secretaries. This guy would guard the parties. Now, how does that make a young guy feel who's got a child? He's guarding an orgy with Israelis. There were Israelis at these parties. Intelligence people. Intelligence? There's not intelligence there for doing criminal activities, selling weapons, going through Tel Aviv, the bank in Rome, selling the weapons illegally. The Israeli agents are the middlemen. And all the money's going to Israel. It really is the truth. The money, not just the money that is given to them free and clear, but all the black budget money that Meyer Lansky's group started back in the 40s has been growing and growing and growing. It's like a pyramid scheme. The highest levels of the Marine Corps and the Army in those special operations levels, the individuals are actually in the mob. New Jersey. You're talking about
the mafia type mob?
I'm talking about the Brooklyn, New Jersey mob. My husband, Al Gray, Sheehan, they're all Brooklyn. Cap Weinberger, Heinz Kissinger. There's the Boston mob, which was shipping weapons back and forth to Northern Ireland. And I don't want to get too deeply involved in that, but it goes, Israel, some of the Zionists who came over from Germany, according to my husband, were, he works with those people. They do a lot of money laundering in the banks, cash transactions for the drugs that they're bringing over through Latin America, the Southern Mafia, the Dixie Mafia, which is now my husband's involved with in Miami. The military are all involved once they retire. They're, they go into this drug and secondary weapons sales. Take the whole Iraqi thing over because they had been baiting, using the Israeli rogues in Turkey they were having little zigzag wars. It's all to sell weapons. It's all about weapon sales. It's all about drugs. It's all about funny money.
Making money.
Of course. And I said, well, wait a minute. I think you're wrong. Because Jesus Christ would have been behind peace in the Middle East and so forth. Well, I was just, you can't trust her anymore. I wasn't going along with the program of whatever Israel wants to do, if they want to kill Palestinians, if they want to sabotage, because George told me that that's what they do. They do a lot of sabotage. They train NATO intelligence, wet operations guys, psychological operations guys.
Okay, now when you refer to wet operations, W-E-T, does that stand for something?
Yes, it means murder, assassinations groups.
Oh.
NATO has a group of assassins and psychological operations specialists who work in combined operations to destroy targets.
Okay.
The taxpayers are paying young men who are not citizens of the United States to kill innocent people, women and children. They get on a flight from Norfolk and Oceana. They fly to Stuttgart, and I was told this is what they do. Then they go by a special helicopter to countries like Turkey, like the part of Iraq, to Algeria, to parts of Africa, and they do wet ops. They'll just, murder 5, 10, 20 people, and then they blame it on the Arabs, or they blame it on somebody else, but it's actually NATO rogue assassins. For Al Gray. Al Gray he pulls the strings. It's all New Jersey mob. Where do you think Al Gray was born? Right outside of Atlantic City. My husband was born in Atlantic City. Sheehan's father was in the mob. You remember that big concert that they had back in the 60s where everybody was smoking pot and they were doing experiments on young people?
Mm-hmm.
They had all the public...
Yeah, I forget the name of it.
Who did all the flying in of all the bands and the drug dealers and everything? Who arranged it all? General Sheehan's father.
Oh,
now, this is the head.
You're talking about
Woodstock, New York. That's where he's from. Now, isn't that unusual that the head of NATO would be, and his brother is doing all kinds of weapons deals and selling things to the military. And I went to his wife's home. They lived in the Virginia house after my husband disappeared.
Well, was Woodstock a kind of
Of course, a testing ground for drugs.
Okay.
Of course, it was just an experiment, like the Jim Jones thing down there in
Guyana.
Yeah, that he was working. I think even little David Koresh was used because he had a Mossad. He had an Israeli agent. They always get away, don't they? The Israelis always are in there, but they get away, don't they? Mandela. I don't mean Mandela. The guy in Panama.
Noriega.
Noriega he was an Israeli double agent. Anybody who is Jewish is automatically a member of the army, the Israeli army.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They have a joint relationship. How can they be loyal to America if they will shoot ships like the Liberty and it's covered up? Something is strange when you have a State Department that is run by Israel. There's something really strange. It's no wonder there's no peace. Do they want peace? No. They want to control all those little countries around. Casper Weinberger is involved with a lot of the weapons and drug dealers, the hit squads that are run, the motorcycle gangs that Tedson Myers runs, who is William Colby's law partner, who just happened to meet me when I was with Sarah at the Smithsonian party, Marine, 4th Marine, who they have this hit squad, motorcycle gang in Europe and everywhere. They call it a motorcycle society. But Lady Diana is murdered. They have, because I read all the newspapers. I go into Barnes and Nobles and I, course, they're going to cut out all the news and stuff. But they had a minor war in the Netherlands or wherever. They had another attack by motorcyclists on Cyprus. In other words, they're stirring up trouble, murdering people so that they'll sell the weapons and
So
the
you
drugs.
really think Diana was murdered rather than just
Oh, absolutely.
a reckless
There's
car
no question
accident?
she was murdered. And there was a woman there, and she was from Pat Robertson's place. She was married to a Jewish guy. And I'm not saying that he was bad. I think I met him once. They were at Carolyn's Christmas party. But it was right after, was it Begin who was killed, or who was shot? The prime minister, the president of Israel.
You know, my mind's blank. But
I know, it's either Begin or
no,
whatever.
But
Anyway, it was right after that, and it's the furthest thing from my mind. You know, I was thinking, oh, great dinner, you know, this is great. So this woman said, and we were in the middle of the prayer, and she said, oh, just thank you, Jesus. I thank you, God, that you killed Begin. We just praise you for that. You know, this is an evil man. We just praise you, God, that you killed so-and-so.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there. You know, I've traveled, been 20 times to, you know, England and Scotland and known all these NATO people and so forth, and I'm thinking, what did I just hear? Thank you, God, Jesus killed the head, you know, because he wants peace. This is the guy who got the Nobel Peace Prize with Arafat. And for the Saudi royals during the Roosevelt administration. And the Roosevelt, the New York crowd, was trying to steal all of those countries away from Great Britain. The Balfour Declaration had sort of come in, and there was a guy named Moose, not the present Moose, who has the Africa desk at the State Department, who's an African American, but this was a guy named Moose who helped the State Department steal Saudi Arabia away from Britain, because Britain was allowing the Saudis to be Saudis, you know, to keep their religion, to keep their culture.
Right.
They were not trying to kill people right off the bat, you know. So George is part of that OSS crowd.
And their stock and trade is just...
One of whom is head of intelligence, is head of computers and the intelligence for the Army, Ron Jarmuth. Now, Ron Jarmuth comes right out and says, I'm an anarchist. You know, I mean, his family are New York, old Zionist Jews. He met his wife in, I think, in a kibbutz. You know, I mean, he's a nice, personable guy, but when you say to somebody like me, I'm an anarchist, just so blithely, and you know, Colby, I spoke with personally on the phone. 2 weeks later, he was murdered. He went to Princeton. My husband knew him. He knew my husband. He told me, Colby told me that...
Oh, this is General Colby?
No, this is William Colby, who was head of the CIA.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Who was murdered in a...
so-called boating accident.
I know exactly how that happened, because, you see, the SEAL teams, SEAL Teams 6, 4, 6, and 8 are on the East Coast, and then the odd numbers are on the West Coast. And some of the people who are affiliated with the SEALs, I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to say it, but...
Well, it wouldn't be hard for a SEAL to come from underwater and tip the boat over and make sure the man's dead, that sort of thing?
The Israelis train with the SEALs. They do a lot of wet ops, murders, over here, because of some sort of arrangement.
Yes! Yes, Buck Rogers, let's go, baby! Yeah! Trump was recruited by the U.S. Army. That's a big secret, but you deserve to know what the Democrats already know.
Trump is an actor. He is not a businessman. He's an actor. A World Wrestling Federation carnival sideshow. He is an owned and operated rent boy for Jewish power and the political Zionist movement. These same elite care as much for the overtaxed mortgage-paying Jews of America as Benjamin Netanyahu cares for Hamas. Trump is a specialised product of the company Cambridge Analytica, a firm that specialises in taking vast quantities of Google and Facebook data and turning it into talking points to press your buttons. Nothing Trump says or does is spontaneous. It is a carefully crafted script. You are watching theatre, World Wrestling Federation. There are villains, there are good guys, close calls and near defeats. In any theatre, there's always the initial struggle of the hero archetype, until, after many trials, he emerges victorious straight out of a Joseph Campbell and George Lucas movie script. Or is that a Dr. Steve Pieczenik movie script? Or maybe a Steve Bannon movie script? Did you know these two Trump operators are both Hollywood-connected screenwriters and producers? Though apparently Steve Bannon has dramatically split from the Trump camp, but then, with Cambridge Analytica producing the talking points, who knows what is real and what is theatre? And that's the point. Who knows what is real and what is theatre? And theatre is the key. In his excellent documentary, Hypernormalization, Adam Curtis explains how Vladimir Putin hired an expert political advisor to start multiple political grassroots movements to both support and go against him. Then, inexplicably, Putin revealed he and his advisors had created those groups. Now, why would you do that? Adam Curtis explains the psych warfare technique.
But in Russia, there was a group of men who had seen how this very lack of belief in politics and dark uncertainty about the future could work to their advantage. What they had done was turn politics into a strange theatre, where nobody knew what was true or what was fake any longer. They were called political technologists, and they were the key figures behind President Putin. They had kept him in power, unchallenged, for 15 years. Some of them had been dissidents back in the 1970s, and had been powerfully influenced by the science fiction writings of the Strugatsky brothers. 20 years later, when Russia fell apart after the end of communism, they rose up and took control of the media. And they used it to manipulate the electorate on a vast scale. For them, reality was just something that could be manipulated and shaped into anything you wanted it to be. But then a technologist emerged who went much further, and his ideas would become central to Putin's grip on power. He was called Vladislav Surkov. Surkov came originally from the theatre world, and those who have studied his career say that what he did was take avant-garde ideas from the theatre and bring them into the heart of politics. Surkov's aim was not just to manipulate people, but to go deeper and play with and undermine their very perception of the world, so they are never sure what is really happening. Surkov turned Russian politics into a bewildering, constantly changing piece of theatre. He used Kremlin money to sponsor all kinds of groups, from mass anti-fascist youth organisations to the very opposite, neo-Nazi skinheads. And liberal human rights groups who then attacked the government. Surkov even backed whole political parties that were opposed to President Putin. But the key thing was that Surkov then let it be known that this was what he was doing, which meant that no one was sure what was real or what was fake in modern Russia. As one journalist put it, it's a strategy of power that keeps any opposition constantly confused, a ceaseless shape-shifting that is unstoppable because it is indefinable. Meanwhile, real power was elsewhere, hidden away behind the stage, exercised without anyone seeing it.
Yes! Yes, Buck Rogers, let's go, baby! Yeah! Don't think Trump just did this on his own. He was recruited. Trump was recruited by the U.S. Army.
The U.S. military, literally, as outrageous as this sounds, is a mind control operation.
Yes, totally now. Totally now. They've gotten rid of the good folks.